Okay, so we're going to continue on with the basics of significance testing. This is part two. Okay, in part two, we're going to go ahead and just talk about two things, the type of errors that you can have. Okay, so when you're doing the significance testing, there are actually two types of errors you can have, right? So basically, either the ho is true or the ha is true, okay? And two things are going to happen. You're either going to reject the ho, or you're going to fail to reject the ho. Because these are two conclusions you're going to draw, right? So, if the ha is true, you want to reject the ho, right? So this is not an error, this is correct. Okay? This is the right thing to do. If the ho was true, you want to fail to reject the ho. Okay? So this also would be a correct conclusion. Okay? So when the ho is true and you reject the ho, this is an error. Okay? Also, when the ha is true and you fail to reject the ho, this is an error too. So we call this a type 1 error. We call this guy a type 2 error. There are two different kinds of errors here, okay? So type 1 error. Type 1 is when the ho is true and you reject the ho, okay? All right? And over here you have a type 2 error where the ha is true, but you fail to reject the ho. When the ha is true, you should have rejected the ho, but instead of rejecting the ho, you failed to reject it. Okay? All right. It turns out, if you do some math, that this guy here, the type 1 error is the same, the probability of this happening is the same as your significance level. In other words, when you raise the significance level, you're actually increasing the chance of getting a type 1 error. Okay? So, how do you control this? It depends on what you're testing, right? Because you can have the three most common significance levels are 1%, 5%, and 10%. Okay? So, but it depends on what you're actually doing. If you are testing, depends on what you're doing. If you're testing for something that's pretty significant, in other words, the consequences of type 1 or type 2 errors are large, all right, then you want to have a pretty stringent significance level there, okay? Because, okay, let's go, we're going to do the example here about perfect potatoes. This is a potato chip manufacturer, thing like that, okay? Well, the worst that can happen is you get some bad potato chips, okay? Whereas if you are testing for cancer and you say that, well, the guy, and I'm testing if you say the ho is true, where the ho meaning that the guy actually has cancer, right? And you committed a type 1 error, and you tell the guy, oh no, hey, you don't have cancer. Right? That's a pretty significant problem there, okay? So you want to have pretty stringent alpha levels for that, okay? All right. So let's go ahead and look at the example for perfect potatoes, all right? So example, a potato chip producer and its main supplier agree that each shipment of potatoes must meet certain quality standards. In other words, you want to make the potato chips with the best potatoes you can get. 8% of the potato chips, so what do we have? If the producer determines that more than 8% of the potatoes in the shipment have blemishes, the truck will be sent away to get another load of potatoes from the supplier. Otherwise, the entire truckload will be used to make potato chips. To make the decision, a supervisor will inspect a random sample of 500 potatoes from the shipment. The producer will then perform a test at the alpha is equal to 5% significance level where the ho is p is equal to 0.08, where the high is p is greater than 0.08. Where p is the true proportion of the potatoes with blemishes in a given truckload. Describe a type 1 and a type 2 error in this setting, given a possible, so we have the ho here, we have a ho where p is equal to 0.08, and we have a ha where p is greater than 0.08, right? Okay, so here we go. A type 1 error is that where p is equal to 0.08 and you reject that load, okay? You misdiagnose it and say that, well, it's greater than, so I'm not going to take it, okay? So what happens then? What happens then is that when you should have accepted that truckload, you're going to send it back, okay? So you're going to send it back, all right? Saying that it is greater, it has more blemishes than it actually has, okay? Type 2 error would be what? When the high is true, when you actually have greater than 8% of the potatoes are blemished, and you're going to fail to reject, which means that you accept, you take the truckload in. What happens then? Then you're going to get some bad potato chips, right? You're going to get potato chips that have those little black dots in them, okay? So let's, okay, all right. So there you go. So they say that one of the other consequences of type 2 error is that you're going to upset the customers and lead to decreased sales. All right? I don't know about that, but anyway, that's what we're going to get. And that's good. So let's go back to, let's kind of wrap up again. All right? So you have the type 1 error, or when the ho is true and you still reject it. Okay, the type 2 error is when the high is true and you fail to reject the ho. Okay, that's good.